Welcome to the Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, Captain Logan, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today, so tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good weekend. I know I did. This is the 200th episode, and it's starting off with a bang with Season 5, but we're not going to be talking about Season 5 this week. No, because it is a very special 200th episode of the podcast, I wanted to reach out to the studio and see if I could bring in someone very special to me and to many of you, Mike Chapman, the creative director of Rare, to talk about Sea of Thieves in general. What started as a fledgling project from an overenthused fan has grown into an amazing community, and I wanted to do something for you, much in the same way that you constantly do stuff for me. By listening to the podcast, you help legitimize what I do here, what I continue to strive for, which is bringing Sea of Thieves news, content, just keeping you immersed in that world that you want to be in when you can't be in it. So from me, from my fans, thank you, Rare, for this game. And from me, thank you to my fans for listening. It's been a long time coming, and I never thought that I'd hit 200 episodes of a podcast, but here we are. I've got a special message from one Thor Von Blitz, who shared with me a recording of his feelings on the podcast before we get into the episode. I'm going to pause on doing the patron callouts and ads for this episode because it is the 200th. I wanted to make it as pure of an episode, just celebrating the podcast and Sea of Thieves as I could. So I will make sure to get everything set up for next episode when we dig into Season 5. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday this December, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Ahoy! Congratulations on 200 episodes of the Keelhauled podcast. Being the educated pirate that I am, I did some math. And did you know that after only 50 episodes, you already gifted us with around 33 hours of entertainment? And after 50 more, so at episode 100, it was a little over half a week. And if I'm not mistaken, including this very episode, you've been doing this for 3 years, 9 months, and 13 days. And I think I can speak for all of you listeners that we enjoyed all that time quite a lot. Keep going, Logan. We love you. Bye.
I've got what I feel like is some good questions. Some cool. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get some answers out of you, but I'm going to throw them out there anyway.
Well, I do like answering questions. I do.
Yeah, as much as you can.
If I don't answer them, it's because it's part of some
bigger plan.
That's going to be a surprise.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand.
I know. I like. Yeah, I struggle with it as well.
Yeah,
I would like to say everything. I really would.
Actually, I kind of want to get into that a little bit when we get going. First off, I have to ask, did you get a chance to go see Ghostbusters Afterlife yet?
No, so it's just come out in the UK, and I've seen some responses on Twitter about it. I've read a few reviews, a few kind of like either end of the spectrum, some quite divisive ones.
Yeah,
but I've read some ones, and you can tell the way they're referring to certain elements. I'm thinking, I think this film's going to be for me. Quite excited.
You're going to like it. You're going to like it a lot. It's one of those things where it tells a story with reverence to the originals. And because of that, it, like, all the music's there, man. All the music's there. It's got the feel of it. It's still got the humor, but it's not the awkward humor that was pushed so heavily in the 2016 version. And it's really good. I think you're really going to like it. So I'm looking forward to
can't wait.
Hearing your thoughts.
It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
How do you make it feel? Because a naysayer, like, it's quite divisive. A naysayer would say, "Oh, they're just tapping into the little gold mines of your nostalgia."
Yeah.
But I think, like, making it feel authentic and heartfelt is it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and you can easily go too far.
I think the thing that they got right with it is that they understood what they were setting out to do, and they laid the story on the characters. They didn't play the story because it was a Ghostbusters movie. Like, they knew it was a Ghostbusters movie, but they weren't trying to play like it was a Ghostbusters movie. It just happened to be a really good story that happened to have ghosts that tied into a previous ghost film. And because of that, I think they really killed it. So I'm looking forward to when you get a chance to see it.
Can't wait.
I noticed you've been playing a lot of Halo.
Yeah.
You've been jumping on Halo a lot. Have you been doing the Rockstar cans at all?
No. What do you get from that? Is that double XP or something?
You get some double XP. The first code that you get, which I have, I'm going to put up here, but I have a little tab, and this one's for you if you haven't gotten it. The first one you get is a golden black AR skin.
Ooh, very nice.
So
very nice.
I will be DMing you that code because wonderful. I wasn't sure.
Thank you. No, I'm not sure. Yeah, Rockstar do sell in the UK, but I haven't seen any on-store shelves. But no, really, really enjoying it. It's like, I mean, if you must have played Halo 3 back in the day and Halo Reach. It just feels like it's like that bit coming back. Love it so far.
That was all new for me. Like I've been going through the Master Chief Collection, and I've never because 2004 was when Halo 2 came out. It also happened to be the exact same time when World of Warcraft came out, and I went to World of Warcraft when everyone else went to Halo 3 or Halo 2.
Yeah. So there was... I discovered Warcraft late, and the part of that reason was because of Halo 2 and all those games at the time. Metroid Prime was out at the time as well.
Oh God, Metroid Prime. That was so good. God, that's an IP that I think Nintendo, if they had like regular normal consoles, like if they just naturally progressed with the GameCube, man, I think Metroid really could have like been that Halo for them. They really could have leaned heavy because it's the same storytelling, same sort of perspective. Like Samus is got a great, like, I don't know if you've played Dread, but holy cow, man, Samus is such a good character.
Yeah, I played it a little bit. I'm really enjoying it so far. Yeah. Oh, let's think about Metroid Prime, like that change in the series, and even right there in the original, right, the kind of your place in the world is a lot more defined. The whole thing is about exploration, taking in your surroundings, the way you kind of interact with the world. Mm-hmm. Whereas, a lot of Halo games of the past, it's like, you're there and you're trying to get through as fast as possible to get to the next encounter. Whereas Metroid, it really is, it slams the brakes on you, slow down, you take in the world. Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping with Infinite. I'm hoping that with Infinite, it's open. You have you're not on a timer and you're not in a corridor, so you just have an opportunity to kind of soak it all in the way you would with like a big world. So I'm kind of hoping that that's kind of how it is. But I was curious because you've been jumping into Halo so much. I was wondering what your ranking is for the Halo games.
Oh, right in there. That's a great question. So
this is a very it's divisive.
Yeah, number one. Again, this is part nostalgia, but also I think it was there's moments in the other games, but it's the widest the sandbox has felt. Like, it has to be the first one. Has to be Halo Combat Evolved. Even with all the, some people say that the pacing is uneven. There's a lot of retreads in the latter half of the campaign. I think, the original, like, absolutely blew me away, and I've played it so much over the years. So probably the first game. Mm-hmm. Love the storytelling of the second one, but
really, okay.
As in the expansion of the lore, as in where they went to the world building. But I actually, at the time, I found it a really disappointing campaign. I remember I had all these daydreams. Probably something that's more like Halo Infinite, with how wide it was, how open the sandbox was, where it felt much more constrained, and the level design was much more linear. Again, probably around just controlling those storytelling moments. So Halo 2 would be down on my list. I'd say Halo 1, Halo Reach, Halo ODST, Halo 3. Halo 3 is a tough one. Halo 3, edging up to the top. Halo 4, Halo 5.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I liked Halo 5. I did like it. It's just that the other games was so much stronger.
Yeah.
Like Halo Reach and ODST are the hard ones to play. So I played Reach recently, and I thought it had aged so well. I had a great time playing it.
That's interesting.
Loved ODST loved the jazz vibe, loved the open city, loved the flashback, just loved the structure of that game as a kind of an add-on, a side story. Really cool, but nothing tops the original for me.
That's interesting. So going through,
interesting. What was your perspective as someone who's rediscovered it recently? That's
the weird thing is I feel like mine varies so vastly compared to so many other people. Like for me, I really love 1. 1 is still my favorite. I remember playing that when it first came out. And having never played anything beyond 2, going through and playing 3 right after 2 was insane. It was amazing. It was like getting that cliffhanger ending tied off in a beautiful knot and not having to have any questions about what happened. And I'm looking at like 2 and I'm thinking, well, what happened? So I went and did the research and I was like, man, these guys, like they were promising the world and they really didn't keep that in mind when they were doing that. So I would have to say Halo 1 is definitely top. Halo 3 for me is right underneath of it just because of the look, the pacing, the conclusion to the story for 2. And then I haven't finished up ODST. I got really like, I liked the change in tone, but the pacing for me was so slow when I was going through New Mombasa that I got bored when I just come off of 3, and I'd had so much excitement with 3 that it was just like this huge adrenaline dip for me, and I wanted to get back into that rush, so I jumped into 4. Reach I did co-op, and I think that did a disservice to me because I didn't pay attention to the characters as much as I probably should have, so I had no real connection to them. So it would probably be Halo 1, Halo 3, and then I would probably say Halo 2 because of just how well that story, like you said, it opens up and you get to play the Arbiter, and I love Keith David, so I'm there for that.
Yeah.
And then I would probably go with Halo 4, and then Halo Reach, and then Halo ODST, and then I haven't finished 5. I'm halfway through 5 right now, but I do actually like the way they're taking the Forerunner story and kind of building out that idea with Cortana. Like, I'm curious to find out what happens to her, because it seems like that situation where all AI eventually like grows to the point where they're like, oh, humans are just a plague, just like anything else. I should wipe them out. And it's like, you kind of helped us for a long time. I don't know. Do you really want to go down that route, Cortana? So I really want to see where that relationship goes.
4 and 5 are like, from a Chief's character and exploration of the character is really strong, particularly number 4.
Yeah.
Halo 3 for me is just Halo 3 is probably the one I played the most of multiplayer and spent so much time in campaign. That double bill of is it mission 6 and 7, the Ark and the Covenant, those 2 levels are absolutely incredible. And a little Sea of Thieves segue for you. The big inspiration for that moment in the Sunken Pearl when the Kraken comes overhead was that moment when the Scarab comes overhead when the door opens.
My God, yes.
That was a moment.
Great.
That was, again, just a little kind of scripted scene, but that really stuck with me from Halo 3. I always remember that moment. It was just like scale. Yeah. As the door opened, you see that huge waterfall as it falls off the Ark, all the water, and you just see the Scarab come on from overhead. Oh, man. So it was quite embarrassing, actually. So I always kind of use that. So I meant that bit in Halo 3 where the Scarab kind of crawls down from the structure you're in, and everyone's just like, yeah, you're showing your age, Mike.
That's crazy. Because you're right. Like it comes through when you see that Kraken. The first time I saw the Kraken, it was insane. It was beautiful. It was majestic. And it was kind of terrifying as well, too, because it was so big. And I'm like, I really don't want to go out there. And then you guys are like shoving me out the bubble. And I'm just like, okay, all right. Well, could be good, could be bad. We'll have to see. But thank you for the segue into Sea of Thieves, because I feel like I could talk to you about just about anything for an hour or so easy before we get into the actual news. But I wanted to talk about A Pirate's Life with you, because this is probably one of the most ambitious updates that Sea of Thieves has put out. It's definitely one of the biggest as far as visibility for the player base and the non Sea of Thieves playing player base. You guys brought in the Disney IP from Pirates of the Caribbean, which was just a dream come true, just an absolute dream come true. And it's unfortunate that you guys were able to land the Disney IP, because it has completely changed the perspective of what's on the table for fans. Because at this point, we're expecting that there's just about an opportunity for everything at this point. Who knows what could if you could get Pirates of the Caribbean, what can't you get at this point? You got Disney working with you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about A Pirate's Life from a rare perspective in a world that Disney was not involved? Because I feel like you guys had the idea for Pirate's Life, because it's very much in your blood, Mike. And I'm very curious, would you still go forward with Pirate's Life if you guys weren't able to get that IP?
So interestingly, the what ended up on screen, the story for A Pirate's Life, the 5 tales, the nature of the storyline between the ferryman and how Jack Sparrow has come to our world, and that kind of mix of authentic touch points, but also let's tell an original story with it. That, I guess, striking the balance between the Pirates of the Caribbean IP, doing it justice, but also making sure that our world was on a pedestal, that the Sea of Thieves was a special place. That was absolutely key to it. But the tales and the experience that you had, bar the specifics of the implementation of how characters were animated and the specifics of the script, that is what I had the pleasure of pitching to Disney in a room in Glendale. Just before the pandemic hit all of us, that was the pitch that we took them through, and thankfully they absolutely loved it. And I think since then, and developing A Pirate's Life, it's very much been the focus with working with them was about how we do that story justice. But amazing. I mean, it's crazy to go back and think about it, really, because I don't know if you have this, but the pandemic just totally messes with your perception of time.
Yeah.
And I can't even believe that A Pirate's Life came out a handful of months ago. It just feels like it's a year ago now.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, a lot of us have said this in the studio, like in hindsight, it feels like Pirate's Life was perfect to really focus you in the pandemic. Because we're all working from home, and it was just this rallying huge body of work and this piece of art that we wanted to make, and it helped us so much to get through it. But yeah, I mean that was very much the story that we wanted to tell. That felt like if we're going to do it, it's got to cut to the heart of everything that the Sea of Thieves represents. What does it mean to be a pirate in this world? Like, we had to tap into the heart of the Sea of Thieves with that story, rather than just here's a little side story that on the side that doesn't kind of impact the major players of our world. It needs to cut to the heart of everything our game means.
So I'm curious at that point, when you look at the characters that are available to you with A Pirate's Life, Davy Jones is one that, unless folks are diehards, stay to the end of credits for Pirates of the Life or Pirates of the Caribbean 5, they would have understood that Davy Jones was no longer the ferryman. So building A Pirate's Life on the backbone of Davy Jones coming back seems like a bit of a gamble, just based on the probability of people knowing that Davy Jones is still a character that's in the world in Pirates of the Caribbean. Was that tricky for you? Were you guys worried that people might not be up to date with the lore of Pirates of the Caribbean?
Not really. I think it all goes back to what Sea of Thieves represents, and the idea of pirate world where nautical folklore comes to life. And it's got that parallel with the Pirates of the Caribbean world. So the idea that characters in our world would refer to Davy Jones as a nautical legend, but he could be brought to life and become an actual adversary in our world, felt so right. I think part of the framing for all of this was, let's tell an alternative take on where the story goes next. So what if, after the events of the movies, Jack ends up in the Sea of Thieves, and it's a new original story that gets the freedom to pull from all of the movies. So down to the crew that's with Jack, how Jack gets to the world, what Davy Jones wants in the Sea of Thieves world. It was very much just looking across all 5 movies. What are the bits we want to draw on, and what are the bits we want to make original? And I think, personally, for me, I hope a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean fans think the same. I think Davy Jones is my favorite adversary for Jack. I just think it's everything that the pirate life stands for. The fact that your freedom can be taken away and you can be in bondage on the Flying Dutchman, and this is the fate that awaits you when you die at sea. It just felt poetic almost, that Davy Jones needed to be the one that followed in the wake of Jack to the Sea of Thieves. And when you think of the ferryman, you've probably heard me say this in a bunch of other interviews and podcasts, that the ferryman is the opposing side to our ferryman, what our ferryman represents and what the ferryman of the Pirates of the Caribbean represents. It's a fight for the pirate's life, both literally because Jack has lost his life, but he gets to live on in the Sea of Thieves. But it's the pirate life, but it's also the pirate's life. It's everything that the Sea of Thieves represents, and that duality of the story was really the thing landed on first. Like, that's the basis for a story. When Jack talks about what the pirate's life means to him in Curse of the Black Pearl, when he's talking about what a ship really is, not just a wheel, it's not just a keel and a hull, it's freedom. The fact that Jack would be invigorated by the Sea of Thieves, that the freedom that he's always craved, it's not going to get taken away by the East India Trading Company. It's not going to get taken away by these trading companies looking to own the world, and the world gets smaller and all the unexplored areas become explored. The Sea of Thieves allows the pirate's life to live forever. And that framing instantly set up why Jack would want to be in that world, why he'd want to fight for it, because it means somewhat different. And I think that's when you kind of said at the start, the possibilities are endless now with where stories could go. And I think it opens up so many possibilities, but I think there's only a very, very small amount of Disney IPs that could actually work in the Sea of Thieves in a way that feels authentic and adds something to our world. And I think beyond the pirate theme, I think the morality of Pirates of the Caribbean, the morality of, can you be a pirate and a good person? It's kind of the story of all the movies, and the journey that Jack goes on. Is there honor amongst thieves? And that's kind of a theme we've explored anyway in Sea of Thieves before A Pirate's Life. And I think that parallel is why those two worlds work, is because the moral driver behind it all is so similar. So even though there's so many ways to mess it up, and I'm sure it's impossible to please everyone, it felt like that basis, the Davy Jones Air Ferryman, the fight for the pirate's life, and the morality of the story aligned so deeply that it was like, got to grab this with both hands. We've got to go for this. This is the chance of a lifetime to do something so unexpected. Hopefully to do it justice, but also the main goal is play it, and at the end you love the Sea of Thieves even more. You love the world and what it stands for, because Jack's put it on a pedestal. Jack loves the world because it's given him something that the outside world can't give him.
I love listening to you wax poetic about Sea of Thieves, man. It's I don't want to stop you.
That's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about. That's where the story came from, and then the kind of the beat by beat, the moment to moment, the flow of each of the tales was very much, how do we top the last one? How do we do something different? And, sometimes we end up being too ambitious, and we cause a bunch of problems when things go live, but the starting with A Pirate's Life and going into the Sea of the Damned and trying to rescue this mysterious prisoner, which, at the time we didn't, of course it makes sense it would be in the reveal trailer, but when you're planning out the story, you think, it's going to be this great kind of surprise when you see him in the cell. But then to go from there and go, how do we then do something so unexpected in Sea of Thieves, which is where the Sunken Pearl came from, which is just this idea for this set piece of the silver blade hanging there in the cavern was that's this, how can we top what came before, which is where that whole tale came from, rather than just giving you the expected stuff that you'd expect with a Pirates of the Caribbean adventure. So sorry, I'll go.
No, yeah.
I will ramble forever unless you interject. So I apologize.
No. God, I've had literally I've got 5 questions in my mind that I'm trying to keep him in the forefront of my mind while I pay attention, because I'm like, I can't forget to ask him about this, because you bring up so many things. So you talk about how there's only a small section of Disney IP that would work for Sea of Thieves. What's another one that you would want to bring?
I can't possibly. Well, one of them's in there, right?
Well, is it? Because I don't know if you're being as clear about what I'm thinking about as what I'm thinking about.
The Easter egg in the
first one.
Tile.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Technically. Yeah, okay. Disney. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, should we be less worried about spoilers? I guess everyone's played it who's listening to this podcast.
Hopefully. Spoilers. If you haven't checked out the Easter egg in the first Tall Tale of a Pirate's Life, you've got an amazing Monkey Island reference, and part of, some people are happy that it's in there. Some people are sad that that's the introduction of it. Do you want to expend Monkey Island in Sea of Thieves? Do you want Guybrush to come to the Sea of Thieves and find his way there?
He's there, right? I mean, it's confirmed in the Easter egg, right? Guybrush is.
Well, he's there.
Guybrush he's in the Sea of Thieves somewhere. He's out there.
So he's really he's the servant then. He's the one at the Reaper's hideout then. Confirmed. Is that what we're getting at?
No, I think of it. Definitely not that. But no, he's in the Sea of Thieves somewhere. What a great place to have a honeymoon. Come to the Sea of Thieves, 5-star, all inclusive, having a great time. But no, I mean, obviously, it's kind of gaming royalty, isn't it? Monkey Island. It's such one of my favorite games of all time. Just a fantastical take on a pirate world, and the opportunity to do that was incredible. And wanted it to be this awesome Easter egg, but do it justice. To go beyond just here's a prop or here's just a piece of music. Let's make it a piece of storytelling that gets people to daydream about the possibilities. So yeah, great world and set of characters.
Yeah,
can't believe we got to do that. Can't believe. So it's amazing.
It's really cool so many questions, so little time. With the first Pirates Life Tall Tale, the Cursed Captain has been talked heavily about as an amazing narrative tool to use to guide players. Is that something that is being looked at for future Tall Tales, or was that kind of a one and done? How hard is it to kind of get something like that voice acted so that you can have such a diverse set of lines for one character for just one Tall Tale, maybe two in the future, with him being above the lintel of the Tavern of the Damned? Yeah.
I mean, that was I think even kind of right in the kind of huge design doc for the first tale, that was like, if we get this right, this is going to be the next great rare character. This original character we could bring to Sea of Thieves, and like totally worth the investment with the recording. And then that recording session was just one of the best recording sessions. Just the actor was incredible. It was great to get all those lines, and it was just laughing along with the kind of performance and the kind of energy he was bringing. But that came from a place of, it's probably, I mean, it wasn't designed to be that obvious, but that came from a place of how did the Pirates of the Caribbean world and the Sea of Thieves world contrast? And it's become meme worthy, and I apologize because I kept putting more Dead Men Tell No Tales in there. But the message of that story is, how are these two worlds different? So you're in the Sea of the Damned, you're exploring these memories of Jack Sparrow, these memories that have been brought to life in this world where memories take on a physical reality. And it's the duality of Dead Men Tell No Tales, but in the Sea of Thieves, dead men do tell tales. So you will see a dead man literally tell his tales through the talking skull. So that was really that's really the message of that first tale, which is, here's something that exists so powerfully in our world, is that you've got this kind of talking skull that you get to carry around, and it's telling you jokes, and tonally quite different to the grand drama that's about to unfold with the Sea of Thieves being threatened. But he's one of my favorite characters that we've added to Sea of Thieves.
So you're bringing up some really good tie-ins that I want to jump into, because I'm very curious about the Sea of the Damned. It's a new world for a lot of people. It's something that's been in the art book since launch. It's a place that we know is a thing that everyone's been asking to get to, and we get to go to it, but it's relegated to just these tall tales. Is that something you want to change for the future? Yeah,
I think it'd be great to go back to the Sea of the Damned, and the kind of theme of the Sea of the Damned, and that kind of the narrative kind of conceit of it, which is, you know, what is the Sea of the Damned? It's a supernatural realm where it reflects what's in your heart back at you. So your memories and your thoughts and your desires take on this physical reality. And that works in the Sea of Thieves because that's where souls go to learn the lesson before they're then ferried back to the land of the living by the ferryman. So that idea that memories could escape the Sea of the Damned, or you could physically travel there and explore memories like that. I mean, going there again in the future is a possibility. Definitely a lot of thinking and plans there. Nothing kind of set in stone just yet. But the theme of the Sea of the Damned is something we'll be exploring extensively as we head into next year and beyond. So essentially the continuation of the story that the Pirate Lord, Flameheart, all of these characters have seen the castaways' immense power to bridge the worlds, to send you there. And that starting an arms race, if you will, or starting kind of the next goal for those characters, is that the Sea of the Damned and its power is truly understood now, and how that could threaten the Sea of Thieves. And you'll see that explored a lot next year.
Oh man, that's really interesting, considering just what I was because last episode I was kind of recapping the last Sea of Thieves official podcast, and one of the conversations that came up with Adam, who I love. I really wish Adam and Pete were more involved, man, because I love hearing the goofy stuff that they were talking about.
They're right.
And so yeah, and God, I was joking about how the company that wants to work with you guys that Adam doesn't want to have merchandise with was Nerf, and I was thinking Nerf would be the company that would constantly be bugging you guys for weird one-off weapons like the ferryman's cutlass as a Nerf sword and stuff. Just it would be goofy and weird. But the idea of him talking about merchandise sparked a thought in my mind, because I've been like purchasing nostalgia for a while through Big Bad Toy Company online, and there's a company, NECA, that makes a line of gargoyle figures that I've been picking up, and it reminded me of an image that I saw that I'd never heard about until after launch, of statues from tier 1 accessories that were never made, and it had Flameheart, and it had Ramses, and it had Belle, and with those characters, with those statues and stuff, like Belle was a pretty integral part to what your guys' E3 presence. I remember the photos of the lobby had her, and I remember seeing like photos and thinking like, well, who the heck is that? Like that person's not anywhere in the Sea of Thieves and stuff. But aside from her, we've seen Ramses and we've seen Flameheart, and I'm wondering, like, what are some of the futures? Like, do you guys have plans on doing statues or figures and stuff? Because like I've got my display case, and I love having what I have in there. But man, if I can get like a nice big statue of some of the characters from Sea of Thieves for my background here, I would love to have something like that. Is that in the cards at all? Like, is that something that you guys have?
We are talking to a few people, and like, funnily enough, that they're the kind of questions I ask, which is, come on, it's about time we have some awesome collectible figurines of these kind of this great characters and this world that we've created. But I know we're talking to a few kind of manufacturers at the moment.
That's cool.
Again, those doesn't mean those conversations are going to end with contracts being signed and things going into production, but I know we're kind of where players are at. We want to see these things too. That's
cool. That's really awesome. Getting back to A Pirate's Life, I wanted to bring a couple things real quick. You brought up some, like, Jack's crew was a real poignant thing for a lot of us at the end of Tall Tale 5. Jack sails through this golden portal with this treasure that is mysterious. We don't know what's in it technically yet. Fan theories aside, and Jack leaves with George and Rose, but Pendragon and oh my god, I'm blanking on him. Eli, thank you. Yeah. Stay behind, but they don't get changed back into human. Was there a reason why the ferryman didn't turn Pendragon and Eli back into human?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like the Sea of Thieves, it's like, I guess on face value, it would be a disadvantage for characters to be dead. Where in Sea of Thieves, it also provides advantages. So both Pendragon and Eli have got a part to play. So that's not something that's in their destiny. They've got a bigger part to play as part of future stories.
And then, so my follow-up.
It's interesting the kind of the Wild Rose and George. I mean, that sorry for the segues, but there's so much to talk about. But that was very much the kind of question you'd ask yourself, which is, do Will Turner and Elizabeth have a role to play in this story? And I got really wedded to the idea of the Sea of Thieves having a huge impact on this Pirates of the Caribbean story by virtue of where it takes place. So the idea of almost like our version of that is Wild Rose and George, that they get to join the crew and kind of fulfill that role as part of where your mind might imagine stories could go. And like what a wonderful kind of way to continue their story.
Yeah.
After being saved by players and Rook being dispatched. But yeah, sorry.
No,
Love this
that's
stuff, as you can tell.
leads right into my question. Jack is now with, or George and Rose are now with Jack, with the talks with Disney. If Disney were to revitalize the Pirates of the Caribbean IP and continue on with Jack Sparrow, would we expect that they would take the lore that you set in Sea of Thieves into account?
I think. I mean, that would be as a thought exercise. How amazing would that be? That would be. I mean, Pirates Life itself was a pinch me moment, like Sea of Thieves was, so that would be completely next level. But I think that's unlikely. I think if I think about the way we felt at the start of A Pirate's Life, is you want as much creative latitude as possible. You want the freedom to draw from whatever you want to draw from and create something original. And I think the writers of future movies and Pirates of the Caribbean experience are going to want that freedom. They're not going to want the future of the characters dictated by what we did, the freedom we had in our game. So I think that's unlikely, however wonderful the thought is.
That's a shame, because it solves the problem of Will and Elizabeth aging out and their kids being the ones, or Barbossa's kid and Will and Elizabeth's kid kind of moving forward with Jack as Jack continues to try and have that eternal life. So I get
the good. I mean, just quickly on that, the cool thing was it was kind of, we had the freedom to pretty much draw from any of the movies. So it's almost like, so then you think, what are the nostalgic touch points from the attraction and the movies that kind of represent Pirates of the Caribbean to us? So which of the pieces we want to take? And that freedom is exactly what we wanted. What's the adversary? Who's the crew of Jack? How are they going to impact our world? And it was very much almost adopting Pirates of the Caribbean IP into our world and almost saying that outside of the Sea of Thieves, there is a world where Pirates of the Caribbean exists. And just having that creative freedom with it was the coolest thing. Because as fans of Pirates of the Caribbean, we could pick the bits that resonate with us and match our world. So at the same time, it's going to be cool to see, where does the actual mainline Pirates of the Caribbean movie series go? Like, as a fan, I'm so excited to see. And I think it will be, I suspect it's going to be quite unexpected where they're going to go with it next.
I think you know more than you're letting on at that point.
No, I promise you I don't.
Okay.
I think they're going to take it in a different direction, I would have thought.
Well, so, trying to think of where I want to go from here. Cutler Beckett was an interesting poll, and I'm kind of curious if you could elaborate a little bit on that Tall Tale 5 and why was he up at the top of the spire, and why does it feel so disjointed from the overall ferryman fight with Jack kind of trying to get his life back?
So it all goes back to the Sea of the Damned and the idea that if Jack has come to the Sea of Thieves, his memories take on a reality. So at the end of Tall Tale 5, the idea is that the worlds are being bridged, hence him pulling the ghost ships through. You seeing those ghostly visions as you climb the spire. So it's very much a callback to what you saw in the movies, where there was an alliance between the East India Trading Company and Davy Jones. So it's kind of these semi-conscious fragments of memories that are kind of coming through. So Cutler Beckett's not really got a massive involvement in the wider story, but it's because it mirrors the moments of the movie so much. It just felt right to have him there.
Gotcha. That's what I was wondering, if it was just something that was like, because as you kind of ascend the spire, you start to talk to the rest of the ghosts that are in there, and it all feels like they're not sure what's going on or why they're where they are. And when you get up to Beckett, it feels like he is kind of grasping at straws, trying to understand what his place is and what he remembers and things. And it's, for me, Cutler Beckett was such a great villain in a Pirates of the Caribbean franchise that when he was there, it was kind of, part of it felt like a death knell to the possibility of him being a true adversary coming to Sea of Thieves. Much in the same way that Davy Jones is a parallel between our ferrymen. The Merchant Alliance has to deal with the Grand Maritime Union, and Cutler Beckett with the East India Trading Company seems like a great way to kind of pull the East India Trading Company as well as the actual Grand Maritime Union into the story, bring it into the folds of Sea of Thieves, and actually start to dive into that lore a little bit more. I guess my first question is that a possibility? Do you have plans for the Grand Maritime Union in its own set?
Yeah. So yeah, the kind of what you're seeing at the end of at the top of the Spire is essentially Davy Jones he's starting to get full access to the Sea of the Damned. He can pull any memory through, and from a storytelling perspective, it's really interesting to almost plant several seeds with where the story could potentially go next. And like, I'm like you, love Cutler Beckett's character, love the message of the East India Trading Company. Now it's fundamentally opposed to the pirate's life and all of that. And I think there's definitely possibilities there, but I think like a pirate's life, we wouldn't just want to pull the East India Trading Company through as straight bad guys. I think it would be, how do we use them as a vehicle to tell another original story that continues to make the Sea of Thieves what it's all about? So it's interesting, but I think so is the Grand Maritime Union and what they represent. And, you know, yeah.
I feel like you're dodging a little bit, but I'll
a little bit.
I'll move away.
You don't want to spoil it all.
Yeah.
And again, it's laying threads, right, that we might not explore. But like everything, and even going back to the art book we put out back in 2018, it's not always represented exactly the way we imagined it years ago, but the themes are consistent, and we always double back on the themes. And we might not do it when we first intended to, but if those strong themes, we go back and we re-explore them.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think has been really fun, kind of seeing where you guys take the story. Is a lot of the stuff that's been in the past isn't necessarily gone forever just because it hasn't been in the game yet. I'm still looking forward to the days where we figure out if a potion dealer is plausible for Sea of Thieves and what the heck is up at the top of do you guys ever imagine seeing yourself build up the rest of the tavern with the upper floor? Like, has that ever been on the table and talked about, or is that something that for whatever reason is just kind of stayed at the kind of like, this is what it is, it doesn't really need to be anything else?
Yeah, I think things, even though general ideas stay the same, the exact execution does somewhat change. So the original idea for keeping the upstairs was that would actually be the onboarding. So that would be what became the maiden voyage, which was basically seizing an opportunity to be much grander with it.
Yeah.
So the idea of, I'm not sure everyone really understands what Sea of Thieves is as a world, that it's a world within the Bermuda Triangle, shrouded by the Devil's Shroud. So wouldn't it be great if the onboarding was the start of that journey? You get to cross through the shroud into the Sea of Thieves as a kind of outside seafarer. But the less ambitious version of that was you'd actually wake up in the upper floor of the tavern. And this was probably me getting carried away. But the idea that the sail pulleys would open the curtains and you'd have the kind of ship's wheel to raise the bed, and it would like from Hook, and you'd basically build the ship mechanics in a really kind of novel way. But then I realized that was kind of silly, and you kind of want to do those things for real out on the ship. And the idea for the maiden voyage became much more ambitious, but what's in mind for upstairs in the tavern now is somewhat different. So things do change. It's just good to know that we've got that space, and could potentially explore it in the future. Well,
you guys have expanded the outposts quite a bit already, just based off of a pirate's life. I'm gonna toss out a quick design idea because I want to hear your feedback on it. With the kind of issues that have arisen due to the nature of the Alliance flag has been something that a lot of people have been using to kind of get around certain issues or certain problems with the game in Alliance servers in specific, which I know is always a topic you guys are kind of looking at. And I was thinking about an Alliance flagpole that kind of sits over by the ship or the shipwright. The goal of it is to limit the, and I know this is it's weird asking you if you want to limit something in Sea of Thieves, because you are like tools, not rules. But to try and work around the fact that people are abusing the Alliance system to avoid that natural interaction of having the PvP aspect of the game present, limiting the number of ships on a server to 3 or 4 depends. I generally think 3 is a good way, just because there's 6 ships possible on a server. So having 50% of the server being allianced is a good way to ensure that at least half of the server is a potential threat out there. But having a flagpole represented on the shipwright, and each flag is representing one ship that's in an alliance. So if there's 3 flags up there, you know that somewhere on the server, and you don't know what they're doing and you don't know how they're allianced, but there are technically 3 ships that are allianced based on that. And if you come out, you can see that if you're a PvPer, if you're part of the Reaper's Bones, then it's a potential bounty for you. If you go out there and you're looking to work with someone that's in a trade company, you can check the tables and it's giving anonymous data based on how many ships are on the table. Much like with the Alliance flag, you could see there's 2 ships allianced right now. That's a potential that I could go join that ship and actually work with them on a trading company.
Yeah.
Is that something that you could see coming to the game, or is that something that would work, or are there bigger issues around an idea like that?
I think that plays into a lot of the thinking as we look to next year in a way. So the idea that, and this is the tricky thing, right, which is part of the unique magic of Sea of Thieves, is that everything takes place in an emergent sandbox, that it is a hands-off, there's balancing, but essentially it's who you're going to encounter and what they mean to you in terms of conflict or cooperation is largely outside of our control. And that's the beauty of it, because you get these unexpected occurrences. I think as we look to the future of Sea of Thieves, I think giving players more roles to play and more ways to ally with people, or more ways to be in conflict with other factions and other crews, feels like a logical next step of where we're going to go. So you've got more of a chance to play with like-minded players and get the type of experience that you want more readily. And that, the core sandbox is always going to be the heart of Sea of Thieves. But yeah, I think not the exact execution that you're pushing on or kind of similar, but the general area you're pushing on of how players know who potential friends, who potential enemies are, and what that means for your objectives in your gameplay.
Interesting.
Definitely something we are looking at, right? Which is the experience is the sandbox right now. It's just that largely random sandbox. How we carve more structure in there in a way that gives people what they want without losing what's at the heart of Sea of Thieves is really what we're thinking about now. Beyond just doing the stuff that we've always done, which we will. More tools and more possibilities and more potential between players, more adventures to have, more exploration goals, more questing goals, and all of that. We'll continue to do all of that stuff. But what's the next level for Sea of Thieves and how do we evolve the experience? Spend my heads in a lot of that space at the moment.
So with
I kind of dodged your question. But
yeah,
I'm kind of acknowledging it and saying that what you're hinting at is very much on our minds.
And that's kind of the goal. Like the idea doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that gets implemented, but as long as or my idea doesn't have to be implemented, but as long as is the idea of how do you inform players what the server mood is like when you log in. Is invaluable to not only casual players, but streamers, players of all different types, whether it be you're looking for ships to hunt down or you're looking for ships to ally with. Having that anonymous data readily available, it feels invaluable from a player perspective, because it really informs how my night is going to go or whether or not I'm even going to stay on that server.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's that in the session, but I actually think we can do more from a curation perspective of how we curate our matchmaking to make exciting possibilities more readily available. I think that's an area we're looking at as well.
Do you see portals playing a part in that? I
think it's even before that. I think even at like a fundamental level, just in putting you in a place where you're going to have the kind of stories that you want to have. It's something that we're looking at. I mean, it's kind of an interesting area, right? Where it's kind of what's the mechanic of it? Like what's the functionality of it? Then it's where's the storytelling potential? Mm-hmm. And then where's the opportunity to surprise people by giving them something in an unexpected way?
Yeah.
So I think the portal stuff and the work that we did with the Sea of the Damned is interesting, but I think it needs to be something a bit more fundamental than that.
Something that changes kind of the core of the Sea of Thieves in general.
I think so. I think so. Or along like complementing what we've already got.
Okay. So with the portals in that case, this has been a bit of a pain point for me. I've always loved the sightlines in Sea of Thieves, and the one spire in the middle has always been the literal pinnacle. And
Yes.
with Tall Tale 5, with coral fortresses rising up out of the ground and giant mermaid statues rising out of the ground, it feels like the tech is in place to be able to dynamically change the Sea of Thieves based on whatever magic is necessary at the time to be able to justify what has to happen.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you guys decided to keep the portal stones up in that place all the time?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good, and totally understand. Hear the feedback. Saw your tweets. Saw other players' tweets. I totally get it from the perspective of Sea of Thieves being this beautiful place and seeing the horizon line. Big thing there is just kind of the discoverability of the tall tales and new players understanding what that experience is and how you get into that experience. And it was a very conscious thing with a Pirate's Life to essentially go, what do we want a new player to experience? Are they coming in and they're experiencing the Shores of Gold adventure and then they're going to check out Pirate's Life? Or is it the other way around? And it was very much, you've done the maiden voyage, you've found your way to the Sea of Thieves, the castaway's right there. You step up and play your part to save the Sea of Thieves. And then Shores of Gold is something you can go and discover afterwards. You see that with how cinematic they are. The kind of level of, it's much more interactive. It's much more like set piece to set piece rather than the cerebral puzzle solving space that the Shores of Gold created. And don't get me wrong, there's pros and cons in each. Yeah. They're very different to create. But it was about giving players that golden path for no matter which outpost you start at, you can get straight into that experience. I do take on and totally agree with you that the fantastical nature of our world gives us a bit more freedom in preserving the horizon line and getting players into those portals. So it's something that we've discussed and we'll look at. But yeah, there certainly wasn't time to fix that in a readily available way while still achieving our goals for new players at that same time for the launch of A Pirate's Life. But no, I've seen the feedback. We've all seen the feedback.
Okay. I'm curious, speaking specifically to changes in the Sea of Thieves, we've recently had some changes over at Thieves Haven, and there's been some restructuring of a lot of the pulleys and trusses and stuff that they have built up around there. And aside from stuff that's imminent, because I imagine when this goes out, we'll probably, hopefully, maybe know more about what's going on with Thieves Haven. But with all the focus on Thieves Haven, it brings me back to the hideout that the crew of the Magpie's Wing had. As far as I understand it, we have not seen that hideout. And I'm curious if that's something that you guys have taken into account when you start kind of playing around with some of the stuff that's going on in Thieves Haven. Like, is that something that we may be venturing to or be involved with story in the future?
Yeah. So what players have started to see as little hints towards some additions for season 5, that is very much the start. And really relates to part of the motivation for Tall Tales was it was a great way to invest in new quest mechanics, having things like mechanisms and traps and the chests you can open and store valuables in. There's lots of, and character animated cutscenes and really kind of basic stuff that players would expect for an adventure experience. And the idea of we build this stuff and then we can pay it back to the rest of the game. Our challenge is always, how do you do that and dedicate design time to it while you're also pushing the world forward in new ways? And I think there's always that conflict of, God, do we go back and improve what we've already done, or do we go into a new direction? And the idea of adding more interactivity to islands is like something I'm so passionate about. I think our world and the potential of our world, I think it feels more static than it really should do. And I think we've got a lot of mechanics we could go apply to a lot of the islands that could make it feel more alive, and there's more things to do rather than just finding messages in bottles and fighting skeletons. And I think there's lots more we can do there. I think making sure we do that justice at the right time is always the hard thing. But there'll be some cool stuff added with season 5. in that regard, but definitely the start of something we want to expand in the future.
Oh man, I feel like you're saying exactly, you're pouring honey into my ears at this point, because I've consistently,
I hope so.
Well, back when Anniversary Update came out, there were the videos that came out, and Andy was talking about, or Andy Preston, for anyone that doesn't know who I'm talking about, was talking about wanting to take some of the traps and some of the booby traps and stuff that you guys have designed for those tall tales and start implementing those into old islands. And immediately in my head, I think of Devil's Ridge, and Devil's Ridge has sprung booby traps. Yeah. So I'm looking at the fact that you say that Sea of Thieves feels static is a very, very big question in my mind, because I see why you're saying that. And I'm very curious, is it from a discoverability perspective that a lot of the NPCs in the world don't walk around? And why that we don't, is that just because you want to make sure that pirates know to expect exactly where Deadshot Charlotte is going to be on Lone Cove every single time you go there? Or is that just a game engine restriction that you guys just can't work around, as far as like being able to have more life other than the animals in Sea of Thieves?
I think it's even deeper than that. I think the islands were designed as stages. They were stages for all these various types of gameplay. You could be there solving an X marks the spot. You could be solving a riddle. You could be doing a bounty. You could be capturing chickens. You could be doing a tall tale. They serve up all these different types of gameplay. So the context of the island can feel different. Time of day, weather, crews chasing you, all the different reasons you could be on an island. I think if you break it down to its mechanical pieces, I think more opportunity and more tools on the island to enrich your adventures. I think it's interesting with the NPCs feeling more alive, and there is an opportunity there. But I think first and foremost, our priority would be, how can we give you more tools on the islands, more ways to enrich your adventures, making the islands feel more than just a backdrop to the quest that you're on. I think that there's so much more potential there, and we've talked about it for a long time. And part of the pitch to the team with Tall Tales was, Tall Tales, some players will play them many times, but we're not expecting the average player to play them more than once. That Tall Tales are a window into the Sea of Thieves world. They get you to understand why the world is the way it is. They give you that cinematic entry point. But we want you to stick around for the love of the world and the emergent world and what's at the heart of Sea of Thieves. So part of the advantage with Tall Tales was it gives you that reason to go double down and invest in all these mechanisms and traps. But then finding the time to pay back that value, that's the thing that we're always wrestling with. But like, I would acknowledge it, and it's something we want to do more of in the future.
I swear I didn't talk to you beforehand, but one of my questions that I've had written down for a long time is literally, what is the target percentage completion for Tall Tales when you guys set out to build Tall Tales? And part of that deals with the fact that you really have taken a pirate's life and tried to make that the centerpiece for onboarding players into Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, two questions. One, have we hit the golden age of piracy in Sea of Thieves yet? And two, regarding the Tall Tales, are you happy with where the Tall Tales are now? Like, as far as design, structure, were there things that you've seen as a result of people playing through them multiple times, and what you can kind of change to improve that experience in the future? Or I imagine every artist feels like they're not finished and they're not going to do something. So are those things that you're kind of thinking about, and kind of starting with the golden age of piracy first?
We're definitely not in the golden age of piracy yet. The golden age is still to come. We're not in the golden age. We're not. I mean, if you kind of look at it historically with what that means from a role perspective and the dynamic with pirates in that world. I mean, the Sea of Thieves is, they're outposts, right? They're fledgling little bastions of civilization in this wild pirate world. We're not yet in the golden age, which is as exciting for me as I hope it is for you.
Yeah.
But
that's a big deal, dude. That's a huge to say that we're almost 4 years in and you still you don't feel like we're in the golden age of piracy. I'm like, bro, what else are we getting? What are we moving forward to if that's the case? Because I'm thinking like Nassau and Tortuga, and it's like if we haven't hit it yet, then it's like, okay, well we've got a lot of places we can go with this then.
often say on the team, it's like there's just not a natural end point for this game. With how broad the world is, the pirate theme, the unique, fantastical nature of our game, it's just, there's so many places you can go. But the parallel to real world history, we're not in the golden age of piracy yet, and you'll see us take some steps towards that in the next 12 months for sure. And the Tall Tales question is really interesting, and it was a Shores of Gold. I think even at the time, I'd convinced myself that this was for new players, but I think in hindsight it was a luxurious approach of really designing it for our core players, and it really relied on, if we're honest, the knowledge of the world and the way islands look in silhouette. And I think it's more about, Shores of Gold was more about thinking and doing, where there was a lot more seeing and taking in the moment in a pirate's life, and that was a conscious thing. In terms of a pirate's life being we want to get you into the experience as smoothly as possible. Hence, we've got the aforementioned rock arches at the different outposts, and then take you on that golden path on this awesome adventure. Just take you on this cinematic thrill ride that reminds you that everything was great about these wonderful Pirates of the Caribbean characters, but hopefully you leave with a greater appreciation of our world and why those characters would want to be in the pirate world of Sea of Thieves. Whereas Shores of Gold was very much let's really test your knowledge of the world and give you this great kind of cerebral puzzle solving experience that, don't get me wrong, has those cinematic highs with a bit of Fade to the Morning Star and Shores of Gold, but a lot of it is really you taking the clue from the quest book, and all of the gameplay kind of happens in your head in terms of picking the next moment. So they're very different experiences and fun to create for different reasons. But I think, as you can imagine, the Pirate's Life completion rates are higher than Shores of Gold, and there's a lot of reasons for that, like the kind of why the Castaway was on every single outpost, why you could enter the portal close to every outpost, is really a reflection of what we learned from Shores of Gold. And it's incredibly obvious in hindsight that, you know, it's very unlike a lot of games that you need to sail to very specific points in the world. That takes time. There's no fast travel in Sea of Thieves deliberately, because that's the way our world works. That you need to then, if you're really into the storyline, you've then got to go sail, you know, X minutes across the world to kind of hit the next tall tale. So we learned a lot from the Shores of Gold. I'm still incredibly proud of what we created, particularly from a storytelling perspective. But a lot of the learnings from that and the completion rates fed into the decisions we made in A Pirate's Life. And the nature of the fact that it's a shared world, and most of the gameplay takes place in a shared world, brings with it some advantages. It also brings with it a lot of challenges in terms of how you manage that, and a lot of problems that are unique to our game, because the heart of our game is those player experiences in a shared world.
Is it safe to say then that it's going to be assumed that future Tall Tales would still kind of stick around in the main Sea of Thieves world, or has there been any talk about starting to relegate some of that story to custom servers through the portal system to kind of ensure that players are getting the kind of experience that you're hoping to craft for them?
Yeah, I don't think it's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. I think I still get excited by the possibilities of doing more things in the shared world. Mm-hmm. I think the Sea of the Damned was an interesting approach, where it just made sense that we can go to this world and we give you this crafted experience. And it made sense for those key moments in the story. I think that worked out quite well. I think, obviously, with the Shores of Gold, we reduced the contention of players around certain areas, and a lot of the things that we wanted to work with Sunken Pearl, we definitely had some challenges when that first launched. So again, there's always things that you learn from doing these things in a shared world. But yeah, still kind of fascinated by the potential of storytelling in a shared world. I always think back to the Hungering Deep, and the fact that everybody, and this is the thing, right? The fact that everybody is doing the same thing at the same time changes the tone of the world. And it's something so unique in a game like ours that's a service where present day is today, the past is the past, and you can go and relive some of that stuff, but players are going to be part of the future unfolding of the world, and still so much untapped potential there. Yeah,
there really is. You bring up present and future as far as the player's interaction goes. I want to take that theme and kind of turn it on its head and ask you a little bit about aging in Sea of Thieves. We have some characters that we know based on the tall tales that they've grown up in Sea of Thieves, but it doesn't seem like, outside of a couple people, many people age in Sea of Thieves, and we know, thanks to Athena's fortune, that some of that might have to do with some of the magic that's involved with Sea of Thieves, especially with the food that you eat. How does aging work for Sea of Thieves?
So what's really interesting is that I will say that time clearly moves differently in the Sea of Thieves compared to the outside world. So everybody in the Sea of Thieves, there's a few people that have been born there, but everybody in the Sea of Thieves has come from the outside world to this fantastical world of Sea of Thieves. And they've all got one thing in common. They've all sought to answer that call of adventure, to be in this pirate world. They believed that magic was real and there was a place in the world where magic could exist. And they followed that map to start this new life in the Sea of Thieves. So everybody has that in common. But the idea that, what if Sea of Thieves it's more than just a meeting point geographically, it's actually a meeting point in time. So people in the Sea of Thieves could potentially come from time periods hundreds of years apart. And when they get to the Sea of Thieves, the way they age is a reflection of where they've come from. So there's a lot of that going on in our world.
Interesting. It's kind of like that idea of when you're really, really happy, the moment that you're in seems to last forever. And it feels like that's kind of like a basis of what Sea of Thieves is you're there, you're having a really good time. So everything seems like time is just kind of stopped, for me at least.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting when you hear kind of Tasha speak about her memories and legendary storyteller and her adventures with Briggsy and all of that. Yeah, it's kind of deliberately trying to create that contrast between her, and she's very much a child of the Sea of Thieves, versus some of our other characters who are very much outside entities, there for greed or there for fortune.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards is at some point she had to have been born in Sea of Thieves, and there was never a time where we saw that transition. So it's all kind of like, did she leave the Sea of Thieves and then come back later when she was older? Was kind of the assumption in my mind, at least, based on the stories that she had when she was a kid. She left and then remembered how much fun she had and how much Sea of Thieves meant to her, and decided to come back to kind of pick up the tavern role.
It's really the best thing, right? You have a world where nautical folklore comes to life and you can play with the concept of time. It gives you the maximum amount of creative freedom in terms of what you can do and what you can bring to the world and how you can surprise people. So time will play a factor at some point.
Speaking of surprising people, Duke the Dark Lord, I got to bring it up with you.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that.
I was really happy when I saw that, much to the detriment of a lot of fans who really love Duke. Duke was kind of a lost soul, someone that I always saw the potential in him to be who I knew he was going to turn out to be. Whether that was actually going to happen or not, I had no clue. But I'm curious with him, with Wanda, with Stitcher Jim. Those are three really main people in Sea of Thieves that I've constantly got my heart for. Like, they are the three people that I am always rooting to find out more about what happens to them. So Duke and Stitcher Jim especially right now, have been kind of MIA in the world. And Wanda has always been a mysterious figure. She's always been able to find a way to hide. She doesn't necessarily need to breathe, so I can imagine she's probably hanging out on a skelly galleon somewhere below the waves, just ready to pounce whenever she wants to. But I'm curious, where has Stitcher Jim been, and where has Duke been? Yeah, but
he's out there.
So
you know what? On the Duke point, I think it's cool that you called it. Or is he a Dark Lord? But for me, like, that whole point of returning to themes and the theme being important, and that, I've said before, but like the lore in Sea of Thieves, it's like figure skating. You establish a theme, you go back and you go over the same footsteps again, and you make it stronger, and then you build on it. The whole Duke thing, and Wanda and Stitcher Jim, it's all about, there's a message behind all of that, which is Duke, as a member of the Bills Rats, in direct opposition to the trading companies, doesn't really stand for anything. Duke stood for adventures, set sail for adventure, having adventures out there in the world, not belonging to anything greater, not belonging to a greater calling beyond just the concept of doing what you like, when you like, following your nose to any adventure that points your way. And that's really the message, right? Which is, what is right? Should you believe in something? Should you believe in something greater? And that is ultimately Duke's downfall, is that the fact that he didn't believe in anything deeper than his everyday is why he was so easy to lure by the Siren Queen, and ultimately where he's ended up where he is. But Stitcher Jim and Wanda and Duke, I agree with you, by the way, they are mainstays, Sea of Thieves characters, and they've all got a part to play. They're out there. They are out there, and the wheels are turning, and you may very well see them again.
I'm looking forward to it. It's interesting that you bring up that Duke is not for aligning with the trade companies when now he is a Dark Brethren of the Dark Brethren court. Is there conflict with that design or with that decision to lump him in with a group, even though that was the thing that he was kind of against in the get-go?
I think it's what Davy Jones represents. It's about the law of the sea. And I think that's something that has, on some level, has been appealing to Duke. And there's also kind of the setup that we did around the Siren Queen, which is there's an element of Duke was particularly vulnerable, which is why the message of Davy Jones appealed to him. But his stories are from over. So the kind of the origin story for Duke and where Duke's going to go next is definitely something on the radar that we'll explore.
I'm going to ask you a really hard question right now. Because Duke is and I've asked you this question before, so hopefully I can get you to say this on the record. But I'm curious with Duke. He's a character that was born from Sea of Thieves, much like many of the other characters. But Duke is a very interesting name that is technically associated with having title. Is Duke an actual Duke? Is Duke his actual name?
Oh, great question.
Moving on. So
that's a really interesting line of thought.
Well, it's
where has he come from? Where did this guy come from?
That's
his backstory.
That's a lot of.
You will learn all of that in time.
I'm curious because and I'm pulling this purely based on previous thoughts that I had. But additionally, the latest episode of Sea of Thieves official podcast talked about the book reveal. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how Chris does with the second iteration, his second go at writing a book. And I believe in that podcast, there was hints that the book might be dealing with someone who we may or may not have the name to. So I was wondering if I'm right on the hunch that the book may or may not deal with Duke. I imagine it's probably going to have to deal with many characters in Sea of Thieves, just based on the time that it's going to be set. If it's set any time between the anniversary update and present day, I imagine it's probably going to deal with that, since we've already treaded the story of the past as far as like how Sea of Thieves kind of came about. Is that something that's kind of like at the forefront of your guys' minds when you're writing a story? Are you trying to set up the fill in the blanks of what's happened between the first book and now, or are you guys looking to take the story further to kind of set the stage for future content?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I think with the first book, it was around the foundational novel. It's about Pirate Lord, what he stands for, what he believes in, the kind of the antithesis to him, which is the gold hoarder, and what he represents, which is someone literally consumed by greed versus someone who believed in the crew bond. Whereas in the next novel, it's very much around expanding what you know and filling in the blanks, but really laying the groundwork for where we're going to go next. So, and this is the beauty, right? This is the beauty for having it's the second novel.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to do something a little bit different with it. And like Chris did such a wonderful job in my opinion with Athena's Fortune.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways, it's the prequel to the Shores of Gold story. But yeah, very excited by the next novel and how it can give you a new perspective on existing things in the game, but also lay some more
Interesting.
foundation for where we're going to go next.
Okay. I like where that's going.
It won't just be a, here's a side story that's all about making you think differently. It's definitely going to lay some foundational work for where we're going next.
That's so kind of the antithesis of how the comics have been right now, because right now it feels very much like the Sea of Champions comic book series has been very much about filling in the backstory of Arthur Pendragon and leading. And I gotta say, man, those comics have been absolutely amazing. I've loved those so much. I want more of those, and I'm hoping that I really want Pendragon to settle down. I know he's a ghost, but I really want him to settle down, because it really felt like something was going on between him and Olivia, and it's such a pain point to see like him struggling in the pirate legend tavern. And I'm really curious, because I feel like
he's the one though, right? Your actions is ultimately what convinced Jack Sparrow, which is that thing like nobody gets left behind. You know, you're the one that you've proven that to Pendragon through your actions in Heart of Fire, and ultimately that's part of the thing that convinces Jack that the Sea of Thieves is different from his world and why it is special. You know, the very conscious thing to bring Pendragon back, and just the message of that, the song that's in Seabound Soul, the start of that song, "Who shall not be returning." You know, if we shall sail together is the anthem of Sea of Thieves. That is the faithful journey of a crew bonded together for adventure. We shall sail together. Who shall not be returning is kind of the dark turn. It's the day after.
Yeah,
it's kind of what that message of that was about.
The music.
I mean, that's why we deliberately went back to that theme. But yeah, Pendragon, love that character. I actually replayed Seabound Soul over the weekend. I've not played it for probably probably close to a year. I've not played Seabound Soul, and just reminded of how awesome Pendragon is.
Yeah,
I get to say that, but
he's up there.
I think he's awesome, and he's definitely got more stories to tell in the future.
I hope so.
You know, definitely kind of the origin stuff is great, right? Because you get to go, it's present day in the Sea of Thieves. You get to explore things in the past. That's quite difficult to do in the Sea of Thieves in the game experience. But yeah, using comics to explore the past and using news stories to kind of extend the future in game. I think that's our approach with some of these major characters.
Do you want to use the comics to explain other characters like Stitcher Jim's past?
Yeah, I think there's loads of potential there. I think we probably will, and there's obviously opportunities there with the novel, the second novel as well.
That's awesome.
Again, it's just giving you that foundational background to characters and the lore and the themes that we're going to dive into more.
Yeah.
Complex, very, very, it's a complex world, really. And the whole, Pirate's life, what does that mean for the Flameheart story? It was like, well, Pirate's life happened. It happened. It's not spin off. It happened. The Pirate Lord saw it happen. Flameheart saw it happen. He will change. He's going to change his approach and his goal, as will the Pirate Lord, as an event of what happened. This incredible event of a mysterious character, the castaway, turning up in the Sea of Thieves, and an outside entity in Jack Sparrow come to the Sea of Thieves. It's all going to change the flow of the story, where it goes from here, and strengthens it, makes it more meaningful.
You bring up an interesting point, because I'll admit, reading the latest episode of the Sea of Thieves comic, Ramsey felt off to me. It felt like something had changed, and I don't know if that was something that was intended, but he felt colder than his normal jovial self, almost like a stern parent kind of bearing down on Pendragon for being so indecisive about what to do. And I don't know if that was intended or not, but I am kind of curious, because we have so many threats right now in Sea of Thieves, and it does feel, from my perspective, that Ramsey is very absent with it. And I'm wondering if that's going to change in the future. I'm wondering if Ramsey is going to try and do something more productive to preserve the nature of Sea of Thieves, or is his approach truly just to try and guide people in a way to say, like, this is your Sea of Thieves, your time is now. It's your job to take care of what's going on here. So
there's an element of that, right? There's an element of why build a tavern out of your old ship deep in a dark cave? It's to reminisce and reflect on your life and all your adventures, and use that as a lesson to others. But I think there's something wonderful about characters like that from novels and movies they've lived their life, they're full of wisdom, but they get called back into action. Or get called back into active service and have to play a more active role in forthcoming stories. I think that is, it's an exciting prospect. But yeah, Ramsey deliberately didn't get involved in a pirate's life. Pirates handled that one. But yeah, may have a part to play in the future.
Okay, I would be remiss, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the captain, because for a long time the captain has been a one word pronoun in a book forever ago. Now he's a one word pronoun in Sea of Thieves. How close would you say Captain is to actually arriving in Sea of Thieves? Is he still, is that something where, because at least from the notes in Tall Tale 4 for Pirate's Life, the Dark Brethren Court are meeting to try and decide like if it's time to call Captain to the Sea of Thieves. And it seems like the captain is imminent. Would you say that that's accurate, or are there still things that have to get done for him to justify coming to Sea of Thieves?
There's still things that have to get done, and I think definitely through the actions of players, they kind of delayed it by derailing the Dark Brethren's plan. But yes, he's out there pulling the strings, has been for an endless amount of time.
Yeah. So into that point then, Davy Jones not being the head of the Dark Brethren Court, has Wanda taken up that mantle?
Great question. The Dark Brethren still exist, right?
Yeah.
They've had their numbers thinned.
Yeah.
But they're out there. I think it relates to questions you've asked earlier. Dark Brethren, ultimately what they want to achieve is still something that's important to them. They had a chair set out for the captain at the Dark Brethren meeting table. So he was imminent in that moment, but yeah, he's still out there pulling the strings.
Okay. Man, I'm not going to get nearly as much as I was hoping to. So there's
still clues. I told you. I gave you a tip off. You didn't find the clues.
No, I know. It's so frustrating too that I haven't found that. I really wish I understood what you were pointing towards, because
I know I can't.
I know.
Point to it now, can I?
No. But maybe I can bring this up. So the Reaper's Heart weapons have had a red lens for a while. And most recently in season 4, we've gotten the level 100 reward for Wanda's Spyglass. With Wanda being absent, this Spyglass seems like an interesting level 100 reward. There's been a lot of theories going around recently about ghosts and being to look back at their former self. Just recently, I've started to kind of take on the idea that is intentional, because I love how you guys will see something and it may not be an intent at the start, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because of the way that it affects the world, you'd start to lean heavy into it. And I'm curious, is it intentional to have Wanda Spyglass as the level 100 reward?
Yes.
What would you say is the goal for Wanda Spyglass? Are we going to be using that for something in the future? Like, how do you approach players that come in post season 4 that don't have access to that Spyglass if you do have plans for it?
Yeah, I think I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm really, really not. And I think there's so many dangling threads in this game related to major players, and yet in kind of bows that haven't been tied, and kind of the payoffs for certain story moments. And, it's part of the beauty of Sea of Thieves being a live service, is that you plant the seed, you watch it grow, you pay it off, you return to it later. So a lot of what you're mentioning are going to be very important for the future. Yes, there'll be. Well, yeah. Would Wanda want you to get her hands on her Spyglass, or is she leaving messages for people? I think you'll see. Yeah, it has a part to play for sure.
The thing that I can think of is her end goal is to disrupt Flameheart. She's spurned by his lack of requirement for love. So her goal is to try and stop him, as far as I can tell. And if the Spyglass is any tool that we can use to do that, I imagine we'll probably use it in the future. I'm curious how you feel if there will be an item in the future that will mimic that feature or that style of Spyglass, so that players who didn't achieve level 100 or people who haven't purchased the Reaper's Heart weapons in the Emporium will still have access to that kind of a thing.
Yeah, sorry. I understand the full context of your question. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a wider point here, which is it's a tricky thing, right? Which is you want to reward people for the many hours that they put into the game going through that seasonal progression. But you also want to give players who they've gone on, they love Sea of Thieves, have gone on a holiday, they've missed their opportunity to get these items. How do you give them a valid way to reclaim those items in a way that feels fair to the original people? So I think bringing those items back in a way that makes sense is something that we're going to want to do. We're formulating that plan at the moment. You got it with the barrel hide emote. It kind of unlocks gameplay. We want to give players an opportunity to go and unlock that and earn that. It'll be in a different way. It's still going to require that effort. But yeah, kind of the use of Wonder Spyglass. That Spyglass has a part to play in the future.
That's cool. I love how you guys kind of do little things like that. Additionally, we just got the announcement of the cannon rowboats. The hints have been there, and I can't wait to talk to Joe about some of the ARG stuff that's been going around with that. I'm trying to think if there was something, because I'm starting to get down to the questions that I wanted to make sure I get the questions in from the gold hoarders that I've been telling, that I've been kind of prepping them for this.
Yeah, cool.
I reached out to Deadeye Dre if he had anything, and he asks.
He must have. Cool.
Yeah. He says, can he ask what he sees the role of a storyteller as being? If he feels he has a duty to surprise or long, slow burn build up to something that doesn't really change anything because we had already guessed it ages ago.
That's a great question. So I think hopefully this comes across in a lot of what we do, but I think it's all about, it's the transportive quality of games. The parallel there with books and movies, it's about, even if it's a fraction of a moment, it's trying to get you to believe that something can feel truly magical in this world. And that's the thing, right? When I'm kind of saying, I'm not deliberately trying to be invasive, but it's because there's plans in place, right, with trying to surprise players in the future. And I'm not talking about the lost style of storytelling, which is like, we're just going to keep changing things and keep people on their toes. You have to pay it off eventually. Part of the reason why I think for engaged players, A Pirate's Life landed is because you've got this history with the characters and their story. Where they've come from, and they play a pivotal role. That I hoped above all else that moment in Tale 3 where the characters of Sea of Thieves stand up to basically profess to Jack Sparrow why this world was worth saving, that would have that emotional draw for people. That's what you're playing for. That's what storytelling is all about. It's trying to create those moments where it has an impact on people. It's all about having that, trying to foster that emotional reaction and that investment. And it's when they all turn up at the end, and it's the true meaning of We Shall Sail Together at the end of Tale 5, where all of these characters turn up. It's what it's all about. It's about creating those moments. And the only reason I'm like, oh, Mike's being really cryptic. Here he is again with the latest little hint. That's what we're playing for. That's what we're playing for. It's the most precious thing in the world is being able to impact people's emotions, because that's the stuff that stays with you after the game is over, right? You turn the game off, and it's the memories, like any great story, it's the memories that they trigger that stay with you, and it makes the world feel like a living, breathing place that exists off your TV screen.
Yeah,
that's the most precious thing. So whenever I'm not answering questions, it's because I'm playing for that. It's the showman. It's the showman in me trying to create something that feels magical.
So that kind of leads into what I wanted to breach on, which is the surprise and delight. We had that moment with the Pirate's Life reveal at E3. It was, for lack of a better word, epic. It was absolutely epic the way we got to see that reveal. It was the most surprising thing we've seen since I would say Anniversary Update was probably one of the biggest moments as far as revealing what we were going to be getting and everything that was coming to Sea of Thieves. But even before that, with Forsaken Shores, with Cursed Sails, with the Hungering One, or the Hungering Deep, all of those were pinnacle moments in my mind that anchor. They're an epoch in time that really speaks to the world is changing, and A Pirate's Life was one of those. So as a storyteller with dealing with surprise and delight, are you working towards making more of those moments?
Yes. So goes back to the comment I made about the world feeling too static. I think when I think about live service, I actually mean it in the rare way. I mean it in the Sea of Thieves way, which is it's not just live service doesn't just mean a rhythm of content updates. Live service, the promise of live service is that it's a living, breathing world that's available to you anytime, and it's evolving all the time, and the fate of the world is changing. And as many times as possible when you play that game, things have moved on. And we have tried and dabbled and strived to do it in many different ways over the years. But I think we've established what this world is now, foundationally what its lore is, what makes it special. So doing more things where we're not going dark for so long that we're telling an evolving story through our seasons being the main storyline. That's ideally where we want to get to. And it's more than just content. It's the fact that the story is moving forward on a more regular basis and people can get hooked in more emotionally rather than it's not just the gameplay mechanics. It's the story as a gateway to those gameplay mechanics and everything you're doing feeling like it's part of a context of a story. So much more we can do there. And I think it's probably, when I think back on Sea of Thieves and all of the very different things that we've done and the different types of content that we've built, I think one of the great creative challenges that we've not cracked yet is how we make Sea of Thieves truly feel like an evolving service. Service sounds like it's a disservice, but I mean in terms of it truly feels like an evolving world that's changing month to month, year to year, rather than it just being, I'm just waiting for the next tall tale. That's the only time the world moves forwards, or that drop of content, it feeling like story's more of an important part of what you're doing. From very ambitious plans there for the next year.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that because I know what you're talking about. I definitely feel it from time to time because it does, as much as I love jumping in from season to season and seeing the different themes, it feels like a lot of the major progression tends to come with tall tales or at least updates like that. So speaking to El Jefe Esteban, who wrote in, he says, we assume that the Flameheart story will be finishing up quote unquote soon. Are there plans for lore/story past Flameheart?
Absolutely. If it ends, we can't possibly give away how that will resolve.
I am curious about that. Like, how do you tackle world events being tied so heavily to the story? Because if Flameheart does end, I mean, I don't know how it's going to happen or if it will happen, but say it were in a hypothetical sense going to end, how do you deal with that content being in the game as a world event?
I think to do that idea justice, I think looking out across the seas and seeing Flameheart glowing in the sky, talking to you and bringing ghost ships through to capture islands as part of his plan, I think it's a great symbol of Flameheart's thought process and what he's trying to accomplish. I think one of the big indicators of his plan moving on will be when he just disappears and he moves forward with his plan.
Interesting.
So I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, we thought about it long and hard with the Shores of Gold and the idea, and Pirate Lord refers to it, right, which is the stain of greed. It's not rubbed away that easily. And I think the idea that there's always, if there's greed, the idea that as long as there's greed in the world, as long as you're still giving gold to the gold hoarders, they're still shipping it back to the Shores of Gold. The gold hoarder still regenerates. There's still a place for him in the world. But with players like Flameheart, I don't really think there's a world where you can maintain world events and build a narrative. And it goes back to that idea of the world feeling static. Things have to change and move on.
Yeah.
And it's very, very complex. It's very complex when you've invested a lot in certain mechanics. And how do you really do that justice? And how do you get new players to understand what's happened in the past? And that's why when I say it's a creative challenge and it's one of the things we've not cracked, I'm referring to all that stuff, which is how do you make it feel like it's moving forward for players that have been with us for years, but for new players, they feel like they've got a window into it. So it's a big part of the thought process. I mean, I don't think we'll ever want to remove the tall tales because existing players may want to go back and replay them, and new players, it's a great way to understand their world because that's the goals of them. But for storytelling in the wider world, I think that needs to feel less static, and that applies to world events.
Do you see a world where you're taking world events and replacing them as tall tales, so that if they did want to go back and actually see Flameheart or trying to take over some of the islands, that would be kind of an on-demand system where they can do it and they can work towards it, and the way they do that is through a tall tale?
Maybe. There's definitely a place for that, but I think this is the thing that cuts. That's what it's all about, right? You've got to be bold with this stuff, and sometimes you've got to move it on and take things out.
Well, that's the struggle with. I mean, just looking at some of the issues that Destiny 2 is dealing with right now. They have been sunsetting content for their game for a while now, and it's completely stripped out most of the free content that's available for new light players. And
I mean, it's kind of different for us because it's all possibilities within one shared world.
Mm-hmm.
And even though some stuff is harder to find, or it's a world event that's refreshing, and you might not always be guaranteed to be there in your server, it is a possibility. For us, we've always taken the approach of we never want to take anything out of the game, because it's a possibility, it's a story, and it's another combination of things that can happen in the world. And I think that's the reason why the end result of that is our world does feel static. And I think we would think long and hard about taking something away. And if we take that value away, we'll make sure we keep the value in the game in another way. So it's not like we're going to take a bunch of content out of the game. But I think some things need to progress and change in order to tell a really compelling story.
Well, hopefully
everything's on the table.
Hopefully that helps answer some of the questions, because I know a lot of people were asking about Flameheart. Mike 29 or Xbox Mike 29 put out, he'd also like to know if we're ever going to get more information, maybe some tall tale stories about the ancients. The Whispering Plague revelation was really grand, and the story that was told through the actual Siren shrines has been exceptional. Probably, I'll be honest, Mike, the shrines, even though I've only done them for the journals a couple times, the way that you guys told story through those shrines was exceptional. I really loved them. I thought they were a great addition to the world. Whether or not people interact with them all the time doesn't really factor in for me, because they gave me another option. They gave me another place to go. But the story that you told was not one that was tied to any tall tale that was any kind of like linear path that I had to work through. It was literally just a few journals placed here and there around the world, and I got to consume that story in my own way. And as if anything, if I could offer any kind of feedback for those, as much as I love them, I would love to have a captain's log that I can access that gives me all of those awesome journal entries scribed into a book that I can read on demand.
I hear you. I'd love that too.
So that's something I love. That story, I love the way that that's being told. So getting to Xbox Mike 29 question, do you think that we're going to, or I guess you would know, are we going to be getting some stories in the future that dive more into the ancients? Is there more story to be told there?
Yes, absolutely. And it go again, just to revisit an older question as well for Mike. Hey, Mike. All of this stuff. This is all the kind of we might Flameheart and all these kind of different story threads that are dangling with Stitcher Jim and Wanda and Duke, and like it's all planned. Like it's planned out. Like the order in which we do it in might change based on the features that we want to do, the way we want to grow the game. But the story's kind of planned, right? Including the ancients. Where did the ancients go? What were the ancients' role in the world? Like even to do, what is the origin story of the Sea of Thieves? Where does it come from?
Yes.
What is it? Why are there krakens and megalodons there? Why? Like that's going to be fun to explore all of that and kind of like over time tell that story. But there's an absolute plan for all of that. And I think Ancients, very deliberately with Sunken Kingdom, that story that we started to tell, you will start to feel more of the presence of the Ancients as we go into our storytelling next year. Cool. You'll feel a lot like I'm really excited by it, actually, in terms of you felt the presence of them right since the start of the game through cave paintings, and we scratched the surface with Stars of a Thief in Shores of Gold, and now with the Sunken Kingdom we've explored more. we'll take another step early next year and explore it beyond. But understanding more about where did the ancients go, what did they stand for, what did they want to accomplish, where does the Sea of Thieves come from? That's when it goes back to that question of what's beyond Flameheart. It's like there's so much. There's so much that's just completely unexplained. That's going to be so much fun explaining in a way that hopefully makes the world feel more immersive. Triggers all those emotions, transports you into this pirate world. So, yeah, the ancients as a thread are definitely going to explore that. I'm really excited.
It really makes me wonder, because with you talking about the ancients and our previous discussion about age and how people don't really age in Sea of Thieves, I'm so curious to find out about this warrior, who she is, and where she went when she was tasked with kind of stopping the sirens and stopping the Whispering Plague. Like whoever that person was, like I'm pretty sure that the person that warrior is the one that's in the tomb in the Shrine of Ancient Tears. Am I wrong on that? Or was that the person that found the shrine and then locked the Whispering Plague in there?
Yeah, the latter.
Okay. And then
the warrior.
So the warrior is still out and about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious with the warrior, because this was something, and I'll credit Falcor for discovering the flowers on Reaper's Hideout on the unmarked grave by the really weird tree at Merrick's Old Island, which is now no longer a thing, which is killing me that's gone. Was there a plan for that, or is that still to be a story that is yet to be told with those with that unmarked grave?
Maybe. Like, you're killing me. You can't just ask these questions. It's the whole thing. People's like, slamming the keyboards now as they listen to this, but there's so many threads, right? There's so many threads, deliberately so. Like,
okay, no, it's that's why I had you on. I've gotten you once every 2 years. I got to ask the hard questions because you rail me if I don't. So I'm very curious about that, because the decisions that were made, like with Wanda, with the Siren Queen, it feels like there's a thread there that ties to that island in particular, and I'm very curious about whose grave that is, because it is still currently an unmarked grave. We don't know anything about it, and I'm very curious to get to the end of that story, to kind of understand what's going on there. So I guess I'll have to wait on that one.
Insiders will know, who listen to this, that there's a new kind of gameplay experience in Insiders that touches on some of what you're talking about. But it's definitely the start of a kind of exploration will continue next year. But yeah, there's definitely a piece of content in there that really reinvigorates some of the players and kind of what the stakes are at play, with the Reapers, with the Pirate Lord, with the Ancients. There's insiders are like, yeah, I know, I've played it. It's very early, and we're really passionate about it. It's gonna, there's a lot to go on that feature. But yeah, that's one piece as part of a grander story that we're keen to tell next year.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad that you guys are going into that route, because that was I can't remember.
The good news is a lot of these questions, a lot of what we're pushing on are they're probably sooner rather than later, as in hopefully in the next year or so, some of these things will get resolved.
That's awesome, because I remember last time we talked, we were we were talking about Merfolk, and that was like that'll be in the future kind of thing. And now we're in this future, and I'm like,
it is right. I mean, with the met of as Dre will know, and Thor von Blitz, like, we're not going to expand outward. We want to expand downwards, and we sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we'd like, but when it's a strong idea, we always get there. And right in the art book, the kind of underwater world of the Sirens and what they represent in the Sea of Thieves, we were going to get there. Yeah. It's just waiting for that right moment. And the Davy Jones story as part of A Pirate's Life felt like, okay, who would Davy Jones ally with? Now is the time. Now is the time to explore the Sunken Kingdom.
That's so awesome. I'm really glad that was a good opportunity, because it really, and I know I've told you this too, is the Pirate's Life feels like the culmination of that original E3 trailer, where you're kind of venturing throughout the rest of the Sea of Thieves story and having all that in there. It's absolutely great to have. I did want to jump into Regis Stella. He asked a question, and we may have touched on this a little bit, but He wanted to know, for the future of Sea of Thieves, is Captain Jack Sparrow and his crew returning to the seas anytime soon? After all, Jack did promise that he will return near the end of Tall Tale 5 for A Pirate's Life.
So as part of the pitch that we gave to Disney, there were several. It wasn't just the pitch for A Pirate's Life; it was pitch for other potential places where the story could go. So as players who've played A Pirate's Life a few times will know, there's potential opportunities of where the story could go, and all of that is still open to us. This is the thing. With all the threads we've talked about today, with the Ancients and Flameheart and the stories that we want to tell, and continue with the story of our characters versus how other people can come to the Sea of Thieves world, entities that people know about, new people, like there's so many potential. I think a lot of the work that we're doing is just kind of putting that in an order that feels complementary. So when I think about that order, we're beyond next year into the year beyond. And it's just kind of like, well, does that element make sense there, or do we inject this earlier? And I think that's what we're discussing. There's endless potential with the way Jack's story would continue. But yeah, nothing to confirm really on that yet.
Okay. Because I'm with Regis on this. I love the introduction of Pirates of the Caribbean. I think Jack has and not to discredit any director in the future, but I definitely feel like Jack has a better place in Sea of Thieves than he would if they were trying to create a 2.5 hour narrative for a movie. I think that the potential for the kind of having his story continue on in Sea of Thieves is great, because he gets what he wants. But there's always still an adventure in Sea of Thieves. There's always still something to do. And with just how many amazing characters you guys have created with the game, there's so many ways that Jack can interact with different people that lends itself to not being restricted to the checking off the box of the people that you expect to see in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And if they aren't there, then why the heck aren't there? There must be some sort of drama going on there. And I would love to have Jack's home be more seated with Sea of Thieves at this point, because it just works. It just makes sense. So
yeah. So the clues are right there. Like, why did Jack leave at the end? Why? He's got everything he ever dreamed of.
Well, he made a promise.
He did make a promise.
Who is she?
What's the nature of the promise, and what's the story behind the story? Because there is a story beyond the story, both before and after the events of A Pirate's Life, and that's what hopefully we'll get to explore one day.
I assume
it was what it was. I mean, the pitch was big, right? I mean, it wasn't just the events of what you saw in game. It was the Jack's reason for coming to the Sea of Thieves, what he was trying to accomplish, what promise he was paying off, and where he's gone at the end, and when he'll come back. It's all, yeah. This is it.
Okay, one last question I have. The tying to Jack Sparrow, and we'll kind of close things up here. The promise that he made to her, is her someone that is in Sea of Thieves, or someone that is outside of Sea of Thieves?
Outside the Sea of Thieves.
All right. Well, I'm not going to press further, because anywhere that I go, I don't think I'm going to get a good answer for. And
can I just say, hand on heart to everybody listening, I sincerely apologize for evading questions and toying with you. Like, it's not, again, it's fun to hint about what's coming next, but experiencing it for yourself, it's the beauty of this game, right? You get to experience it through your pirate's journey in this world, and it would be remiss for me to spoil all of that. It's like, if Pirate's Life was spoiled before you got to experience it for yourself, it would have taken away all its magic and all of its power. And it's the beauty of creating a game like this is the game is we're approaching 4 years old, which is crazy. But myself and the team are so passionate about creating this world, and there's so much more potential. Like, it's not yet the golden age in the Sea of Thieves. There's so many more themes that we want to explore, and the nature of the world and why it's there, and all these kind of major players in it. I just don't want to spoil all of that, because it's going to be better when you experience it for yourself.
I'm hoping that people realize that the reason why I'm asking these questions isn't to try and just reveal everything, but to plant the seed in their mind of knowing that you guys are actively working with those thoughts in mind, because I know you guys are doing that. I know you guys have got most of that stuff on lockdown. I mean, you've already copped in one of the prior podcast episodes that you're already hard at work on season 7. I would not be surprised that you guys are already working on season 9 at this point. Because you guys generally work on a 12-month lead time for ideas, and then engineering, crafting, designing, and then implementation and stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, you guys already know like what's coming this time next year, roughly.
And beyond.
Crazy. Okay.
And
so
years. Obviously, it's always changing, right? You're always kind of moving things around. And we just, like, it's not just, there's the purity of the storytelling, the themes you want to explore, and the gameplay mechanics we want to add. And then there's the reality of, okay, when you scope them and understand them, where are the complexities? Do things need more time than you originally thought? It's, it's at the end of the day, this is a team of people. And there's only so much people you can pull together before it gets really unwieldy. So we have to do things in the right time and the right order. So things do move around, but generally the end destination of where we want to get to is mapped out.
Yeah.
And I'm as excited as you are. I am as excited as you are, for seeing all this stuff come to reality. And as we as a team always say to each other, like, we're just getting started. Like, there's so many places this game could go. There's still so much life to explore, and ways we can bring it to life for so many people. So yeah, it's unique. We still think Sea of Thieves is unique as an experience. It's unique as a world. So yeah, just so excited to keep exploring it.
Yeah, and
hopefully doing things that it's more than just the expected. It's more than just generic pirates. We're putting our own stamp on it. We're doing it with heart. We're trying to delight and surprise people. That's what we're striving to do. Is give someone something through Sea of Thieves that they can't get elsewhere.
As far as I'm concerned, and I'll fight anyone on this, you guys are the de facto pirates game out there. Like, no one does it better.
That's good.
No other company is even approaching pirates as well as you guys are. I've seen plenty of other companies out there trying to craft a pirate story. I'm still really excited to see what Ubisoft is going to try and do with Skull and Bones. Like, they've completely like been off the map for forever, and I can't wait to see what they do, because everything that they do is going to be a direct response to what you guys have crafted. But you guys have had 4 years of feedback, 4 years of design, 4 years of creation, and time spent building up Sea of Thieves to what it is. And it is one of the pillars of Microsoft at this point. No one, I don't know anyone that can argue me that Sea of Thieves hasn't become one of the biggest IPs, not only for Rare, but for Microsoft at this point. So I fully anticipate, like, as much as you can't answer today, I know that we'll get those answers in years to come, because I have no doubt that Microsoft is 100% behind Sea of Thieves. The team at Rare is 100% behind Sea of Thieves, and I'm looking forward to Everwild. But Sea of Thieves is doing exactly what you guys set out to do, which was create this shared world experience and craft story and lead players into adventures to try and just have fun. Just create a game that is just designed around fun. And there's always problems with that when you're trying to build a game. Games are the hardest thing to create when it comes to entertainment. So you're always going to run into things like that. But hands down, as far as story, as far as experience, as far as world goes, I absolutely think that Sea of Thieves has a special place in the pantheon of games. And I don't think you guys get nearly as much credit for your storytelling and your experience and your atmosphere as much as you should, because a lot of other games out there are doing things similar, and I like them for different reasons. And I think a lot of people like I'm sure a lot of the team plays a lot of the same games that I do and really loves that. Forza Horizon 5 is a good example of what a really beautiful game can do when you put the time in for it. And Sea of Thieves is right there with it, as far as, like, if you want to have a pirate experience, you go to Sea of Thieves. There's no other game that you should even bother with. So, Mike, I've kept you for 2 hours. Thank you for giving me this time. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get together in the future to talk about some of the stuff that we touched on today, and actually have some answers and kind of look back retrospectively on how those went, if it led to future questions that will hopefully get answered a year from then. Is there anything that you guys that you'd like to share with the community, or anything that you'd like to let them know, if there's been something that you've seen that we haven't addressed, that you want to reassure them on?
I just want to kind of, we say it all the time, but I just want to take every opportunity I can to just say thanks to everyone that's played the game. Thanks to everyone that tells the stories, that writes the fan fiction, that doodles the pictures, that shares their story. It's I can't tell you how much it means to the team. Like the team that made this game. I mean, it's all about, games are a reflection of the people that make them. And that is just so true. And the team that makes this game, who've made this game over several years, that have grown together, that have built that bond together, they all adore this game. But there's nothing better than seeing a community like the community that we have love this game and tell their stories and make new connections in it. I think it's why the game is still thriving nearly 4 years later. It's because the lifeblood of the community that play it, and it's almost, not trying to make it sound like a cliche, but it's just fact that we can't do it without the community. Like we provide the world, but they bring it to life, and there's nothing more true than that. So we're more inspired than ever to keep going, and just want to keep surprising people and keep, it's a world to escape into. This all about the freedom of the pirate life, but that's mirrored in the mechanical freedom of the game. And when you boot up Sea of Thieves, we want it to feel like, you're being transported to this pirate world where you get to live this pirate life, and that inspires us as much today as it did 4 years ago. So thanks to everyone.
Well, thank you. This game has afforded me a family that I didn't know I was going to have 4 years ago. And because there's no way that I can thank you and the team enough for giving me an opportunity to have a place where I felt a sense of passion that I haven't gotten with anything else in life. And the people that surround me on a day-to-day basis through an online community they mean the world to me. And if it weren't for you and your ideas and your thoughts and your dreams being put to reality with the team, I wouldn't have those friends now. And I can't, there's no way I can repay that. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Like even when you say that, it doesn't, it doesn't feel real, really. Like it is. Like we try to, it's great to talk about the success of the game, but then you're on to the next thing, right? You've got your head down and you're trying to create the next great thing in the game. So always try not to believe our own hype at the same time. It's like, stay humble, stay hungry, keep going, keep trying to make dreams come true in the game. And that's what we're aiming to do, give people new experiences.
Well, I don't think of a better way to end on that note. Mike Chapman, thank you so much, man. It's such a pleasure getting
thank
to
you. Thank you. That was awesome. We should do it again.
Oh, 100%.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.
Hey Simone,
Yes, Chad.
what would you say is your favorite bad movie?
Oh, where would I start? But probably at zombie strippers.
Oh yeah, which we've actually done on our podcast, Fresh Tomatoes, the movie podcast. This is a podcast where we take some of the worst movies ever created, and even some of those movies that you might have thought were brilliant, but still got a bad critic score, and we say nice things about them, because you know what? Someone put the effort in, so we're gonna be there fighting in their corner.
Absolutely, Chad. Even if the movie was total garbage, there are some makeup artists that gave it their all, and we're here to recognize that.
Exactly. And with really fun themes every week, such as National Treasure Week, Weddings Week, movies with Jeremy Irons and dragons in them. How could you go wrong by joining us every Tuesday and Thursday for some optimism in your life?
And like we say at the end of every episode, we love you and there's nothing you can do about it.
We love you and there's nothing you can do about it. Goodbye!
Following is a public service announcement from the Starter Set Dungeons & Dragons podcast. This is your D&D campaign. This is the Starter Set podcast. You know how like poison frogs don't lick each other's backs?
So it's Howl's Moving Castle with a face.
Hey there, I'm Great Mandibles.
Because one of the party speaks abyssal. You're all going to die.
And then adventure falls into your lap. Plop.
This is your D&D campaign after listening to the Starter Set podcast. So join Sam and Ed every Friday on the Starter Set podcast for prime Dungeons & Dragons content. Any questions?